He interrogates his prime suspect personally, in a hotel room, off the books, and still can't make an arrest stick. Eliot Ness, the man who jailed Al Capone, spends 3 years hunting the killer, dismembering bodies along Cleveland's Kingsbury Run, at least 12 victims, some never identified, heads separated with surgical precision. The killer taunts him. The case breaks him. So why does Ness go silent, and why do the murders simply stop? September 23, 1935. Kingsbury Run cuts to Cleveland's east side like an open wound, a railroad gully lined with weeds and steam, its slopes covered in a Depression-era shantytown of scrap wood and tar paper, home to hundreds of men with nowhere else to sleep. 2 teenage boys are cutting through the brush below a slope locals call Jackass Hill when they see something pale in the weeds. It isn't a dog. It's a headless, naked body, the skin an odd reddish tan. A few feet away, a second one, also male, also missing its head. Police find no blood, no drag marks, no struggle. Whoever did this killed these men somewhere else and brought the pieces here to be found. One victim is identified fast, Edward Andrassy, a small-time hustler with a police record. The other man is never identified at all. The coroner's report stuns detectives. These heads weren't hacked off. They were removed cleanly through the joints, the kind of anatomical precision you'd expect from a surgeon, not a street brawler. Andrassy has also been castrated. Detectives lean on the obvious theory. Andrassy ran with a rough crowd and made enemies. Case closed, they assume, once those enemies turn up. Then, in January, a woman's remains surface nearby, cut with exactly the same skill. By spring 1936 there's a third victim, then a fourth, each dismembered with that same eerie precision, most dumped along the same mile of gully. Cleveland's papers start naming the pattern no one wants to say aloud: one killer, working this stretch of ravine again and again. The city's detectives are drowning in unidentified transients, and no leads. What they don't know yet is that the man about to take charge of hunting him has already made his name destroying Al Capone. Eliot Ness arrives in Cleveland in December 1935, already a legend, 32 years old, the federal agent whose raids gutted Al Capone's bootlegging empire in Chicago. Cleveland's new mayor makes him public safety director, in charge of police and fire, hoping he'll clean out a force riddled with corruption. Ness throws himself into exactly that, purging crooked cops and modernizing the fire department. The torso murders, for now, are somebody else's problem. But the bodies keep coming. By summer 1936, Cleveland's papers have a name for the killer nobody can catch: the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run. Reporters float theory after theory: a deranged surgeon, a vengeful drifter, a woman scorned. Then on June 5, 1936, 2 boys find a severed head wrapped in trousers near the same stretch of the run. The rest of the body turns up close by. It's murder number 3, and panic tips into hysteria. Editors start asking, in print, why Cleveland's most famous crime fighter hasn't caught a killer working blocks from downtown. Ness can't ignore that. He assigns detectives Peter Merylo and Martin Zalewski to the case full-time, and Merylo throws himself into it obsessively, walking the hobo camps at night disguised as a transient, riding freight cars, questioning hundreds of men living rough along the tracks. It's dangerous, thankless work, and it turns up almost nothing solid. Merylo becomes convinced the killer must live near Kingsbury Run, must know the shantytowns intimately, maybe is even one of the homeless men he's interviewing. He isn't wrong that the killer knows the terrain. What he doesn't know yet is that the answer isn't hiding in a shantytown at all. It may be standing in a doctor's office, closer to the city's own power than anyone has considered. Cleveland's coroner, Samuel Gerber, becomes fixated on one detail: whoever is doing this knows the human body. The dismemberments aren't crude, they're fast, clean, done by someone comfortable cutting through cartilage without hesitation. Chemical burns on some remains suggest the killer uses a corrosive to speed decomposition or mask identity, the kind of substance found in a lab, a mortuary, or a hospital. Quietly, Gerber starts to wonder if Cleveland is hunting a doctor. Identifying the dead becomes its own nightmare. Most victims are transients, men and at least one woman living in the shantytowns with no fixed address, no dental records anyone can find, sometimes no name at all. Of the 12 eventual official victims, only a handful are ever identified. Detectives fingerprint every corpse they can, circulate reconstructed photos, chase missing persons reports from 3 states. Most leads dead end in silence. Nobody comes looking for a man nobody knew was gone. Merylo alone claims to interview over 1,000 suspects before it's over. Police drag the river, raid shantytown shacks, arrest and release dozens of transients, chase tips that go nowhere. Hungry for anything, the papers print psychiatrists' theories about what kind of man could do this: intelligent, controlled, likely educated, possibly with surgical training, someone who could pass for respectable in daylight. It reads less like a hobo hunting the homeless, and more like someone hunting from the shadows of respectability itself. By 1938 the toll stands at 11, maybe 12, even the exact number is disputed to this day. Ness has stayed publicly quiet, letting Merylo run the street-level hunt. But behind closed doors, working almost alone, he starts building a different kind of list, not transients, but educated men with medical backgrounds who live near Kingsbury Run. One name on that list belongs to a Dr. Ness has actually met. The doctor's name is Francis Edward Sweeney. He served as a surgeon in World War I, in a unit that performed field amputations, and came home with real skill in fast, clean anatomical cutting, and some accounts suggest, real trauma. By the 1930s his medical career has collapsed into alcoholism and a failed marriage. He drifts, on and off, near Kingsbury Run, close to the exact stretch of gully where the bodies keep appearing. One more detail makes the case radioactive. Sweeney is the cousin of Congressman Martin Sweeney, one of Ness's loudest political enemies. In 1938, Ness arranges a secret interrogation, reportedly at a Cleveland hotel, off any official record. He brings in Leonard Keeler, co-inventor of the polygraph, to run the test himself. Accounts suggest Sweeney fails it badly. Across multiple sessions, Keeler reportedly calls him one of the strongest indicators of guilt he's ever examined. Drunk through parts of the questioning, Sweeney is, by some accounts, openly hostile, even taunting, as though he knows exactly what Ness suspects and doesn't care. But Ness has no confession, no physical evidence, no witness, nothing that survives a courtroom, only a failed lie detector result that isn't even admissible. Arresting a sitting congressman's cousin without ironclad proof could end Ness's career and hand his enemies exactly the weapon they want. So Ness does something else instead. He can't put Sweeney on trial, but he can make sure Sweeney never walks free again. Within weeks of the interrogation, Sweeney checks himself, voluntarily, or perhaps not so voluntarily, into a veterans' hospital, the first of what becomes a lifetime of institutional stays. Whether that was Ness's doing, Sweeney's own unraveling, or both, nobody still alive can say for certain. What's certain is what happens next in Kingsbury Run itself, in the single most publicly criticized decision of Eliot Ness's career. On August 18, 1938, weeks after the Sweeney interrogation, 2 more torsos surface in the run, the 10th and 11th official victims, found in the heart of Ness's own jurisdiction. It's the final insult, and Ness answers with force. He sends police to descend on the Kingsbury Run shantytowns at night, and by morning every shack is burned to the ground. Hundreds of homeless men are rounded up, fingerprinted, and driven out of the only home they had left. Cleveland's papers, and much of the public, are outraged, not at the killer, but at Ness. He's just destroyed the homes of hundreds of desperate, innocent men to close a case he hasn't actually solved, and he did it without ever publicly naming a suspect. To many, it looks like a man swatting flies instead of catching a murderer. Ness never explains his reasoning publicly. He never mentions Sweeney's name in any surviving official statement, then or ever again. Meanwhile, the county sheriff, working his own angle, arrests a different suspect entirely, a Slovak laborer named Frank Dolezal, coerced into a confession investigators later doubt was ever true. In August 1939, Dolezal dies in his jail cell before facing trial, under circumstances his own family calls suspicious. He was very likely innocent. And the murders that terrorized Kingsbury Run simply stop. No more bodies. No more headlines. No trial, no verdict, no closure, just silence. Sweeney spends the rest of his life drifting through veterans' hospitals, reportedly still drinking, reportedly still writing, including, some historians believe, taunting postcards mailed to Ness for years afterward, postmarked from the very institutions holding him. He dies in 1964, never charged, never tried, the case against him never made public in his lifetime. Ness leaves Cleveland in 1942 having never solved the murders on the record, and by most accounts, never speaks of the case again. Cleveland's torso killer case is, technically, still unsolved. No arrest, no trial, no confession that ever held up in court. What it really exposed wasn't only one man's cruelty, but how easily justice bends around power, and how many Depression-era lives, poor, transient, unnamed, were disposable enough to disappear without any one official ever learning who they'd been. Eliot Ness left Cleveland under a cloud a few years later, his reputation never quite what it was before Kingsbury Run. This has been case file number 024. The file is closed. But another one's already open on my desk. Subscribe so you don't miss it.